All right, I'm back and ready for the next step in our painting. And so for this one, I am going to mix up a lighter brown. So the way I'm going to go about that, and I'm going to mix up quite a bit because I definitely don't want to run out. I'm going to be using it for a number of areas. It's taking the brown straight from the paint palette, and I am going to mix in some yellow into that brown. Also going to be adding water to that. Some more yellow in, because I do want it to be lighter than the other one. And again, more water. Like I said, a fair amount. And then I'm going to test this on a little scrap piece of paper just to make sure that I'm happy with the color. So I'm just grabbing a scrap of paper I have from another project. Still pretty close. I'm gonna mix in a little bit more yellow and some more water. It's always a good idea to test your colors, make sure that they look the way you want them to. Okay, I'm happy with that color. It's more of a golden brown, so I'm gonna go ahead and start painting with it. So the first area that we're actually going to paint is going to be the floor. So if you want to change this and do a different color for the floor, that's fine. I have no problem with that, but I am going to use this color for my floor. And I'm going to find a slightly larger brush to use for this part, hopefully. Okay, so I've switched to a bigger brush for this section. As you know, it's a good idea to use more than one brush in a painting. You see it's much thicker. And I'm going to go ahead and okay. And next, what I'm going to do with this is I am going to go around the outside edge of the door with this color. So I'm going to probably switch back to my smaller brush again. And I'm going to flip my book. So next I am going to paint some detail work here. So take your time on this. If you feel like you don't have enough control with your brush and you want to try doing this step with colored pencils, you could certainly give that a shot. Don't have a problem with that, but you're going to want to pick a color that's fairly close to what we're using with the paint, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and show you which ones I'm going to paint in. So I'm going to go ahead and paint in the side of this door, right here, along here. I'm going to take my time with this. I'm going to paint right here. Then I'm going to do those same ones on this side and in the bottoms too. So I'm just going over this one more time to saturate the color a little bit more. gonna dry my brush off here, and I'm gonna pick up some of this extra paint with my dry brush. Okay. And I'm gonna let that dry. And I'm going to also use the same color on my light switch. Ooh, that looks like it got some bluish green paint in there, so I'm gonna rinse my brush off and pick up the yellow that's up there. And I'm gonna go ahead and paint over this entire rectangle with that color. I went a little bit out of the lines there. It's not gonna be the end of the world, but I'm gonna go in with a wet brush, just gently rub that off with my wet brush, and then I'm going to press down with the clean tissue on the area that was wet so that the color from the inside of the light switch doesn't continue to expand out. Okay, so there are some areas where, you know, I had maybe a bleed here. It's not the end of the world. Those are probably going to happen to you too. Of course, if you're more patient than me or you take your time, that may not happen. And I can always go back in later and fix those. So I'm going to let this dry for, I don't know, 10 to 15 minutes. And then I'm going to come in and I am going to paint in the shadows here on the doors. Okay, so these are going to be our areas of shadows, and I may do a little bit more layering with my brown paint. So when we come back, we'll see what it looks like, and then we'll talk about the background here. So this wall, it's going to be your choice what color you do it, so I'm not going to walk you through painting that. I am going to pick probably a moody blue, but you can choose to use whatever color you want for this area, but I would advise you to think about painting it in as opposed to leaving it white. Okay, so we'll be back in about 15 minutes to do these last details. Okay, so I have painted my wall in my house, and I have let everything dry, and now I'm ready to add a little bit of shading to the sections on the door that are still white, a few other areas in my paintings. We're just going to be finishing up the details on this page, and then once we have this done, we're going to move on to the part that I think is pretty exciting and pretty cool, and hopefully you'll be excited about as well. So I'm going to be adding shadows to my door. So I'm going to go ahead and mix up some brown with a small amount of blue in it. So just a tiny amount of blue. So I still want this to be brown, but I want it to be a little bit darker. So maybe a touch more. Can always add in more blue as needed. I'm gonna add a little bit of brown, a little more blue, and I'm gonna dry my brush out before I get the blue because I don't want my paint getting too watery. Okay, I think that's pretty good. So I can go ahead and use this to paint the shadows in on the door. So that's gonna be the top panels here and the side panels. And again, remember that I said if you're really having trouble, if this area was really thin when you drew it, you could use colored pencils to do some shading. So you would pick your darkest brown for this area. I think I'm actually going to add some brown to that. It's looking a little too gray. So I'm going to come back in here and adjust and refine my work based on what I'm seeing. So that's what a good artist does. An even better artist would have probably tried their colors ahead of time. Okay, and I'm gonna add a few more shadows in some places. I feel like we might see one. So I'm gonna put one under the doorknob. Go in and put some lines in on this light switch. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna plan out a shadow. And this came about because I needed a solution for being able to open this door. That's right, we're gonna make this door open. So I currently don't have an X-Acto knife at home. And I figure that probably most of you don't either. So I had to think about how can we neatly cut this door so that it opens without using an X-Acto knife and with just using scissors. So my solution is to create a shadow under the door, and I'll explain how that's going to help us when we come to the cutting portion. So I'm just going to lightly sketch in an area. So these lines are going to come from this side, and we're going to do them on a slant or a diagonal, and from this corner of the door on a slant or diagonal. Okay, now for this shadow, and it may extend further, but for now what we're going to do is we're just going to leave it on a diagonal, and that's because I need it like that to cut it. So I'm going to mix up a little bit more of that darker color I was using, and I'm going to use that to paint my shadow on the floor. So I'm going to darken that up just a touch, right where the door and the floor are meeting. I'm just going in with a very tiny amount of black on my brush. A little bit more. Okay, so while I'm letting that dry, let's do the doorknob and the hinges. So for that, I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna use mostly yellow, a tiny amount of brown. I'm gonna just mix in the brown I have left here. I don't want it to match exactly with the yellow or the kind of tan we used for the highlights on the door, but I want it to be kind of like a golden color. I'm going to put a little highlight over here, and I'm going to see if I can tiny amount of yellow. Okay, so that's pretty good. We're going to let this dry, and then once it's dry, we're going to come back. We are going to be doing some cutting, and we will begin working on what's behind the door. Okay, so I'll see you in the next video.